So something I've had on my mind for a long time now is I've had a Steam account for I think whenever Half-Life 2 came out was when I first got a Steam account, and then I really started getting into PC gaming. And so I've been building a Steam library since then. And I thought, just why not do some Steam Roulette? And this way, I can just try random games for my Steam library. But I'm going to do certain restrictions where I'm going to limit myself to a maximum of 10 hours of playtime before I move on to something else. Or if I beat it within those 10 hours. And I don't have to be super exact about it. Like if I'm about to beat a game anyways, I'll just finish the game. So they're not like super strict rules. But I need to put some kind of restriction like that. Because if, like, The Witcher could take me forever, pretty much. All the Witcher games, all the Fallout games, all the Elder Scrolls games. There's MMOs in here, which you can play pretty much infinitely. So I have to draw some kind of line somewhere, and if I don't have some kind of restriction like that, it could take me years anyways. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and I have a wheel, and it has 386 games on it. So we're gonna spin it and see what I get. And so speak of the devil, I guess. This is just my 10-hour initial impression of The Witcher 3. I'm viewing this as a standalone product. So this is ignoring the two games before it and the media that originally influenced it. I noticed that throughout the game, it presents tons of dialogue choices to you, and they're basically inconsequential, and I kind of wish they didn't have them at all, and they just played out the story as it was written, because it's all to give you an illusion of choice. And I hate that there's certain things about this game that it's like they're imitating an RPG. I can't speak much about how well the leveling system works because I only got to level 5. I did quests for the Baron up to the botchling stuff, and I did all the Cura quest stuff. I was playing on the second to highest difficulty, so I was constantly swarmed by groups of like 5 enemies that could 1 or 2 shot me. So that kind of prevented me from getting a lot further in the story. The one thing I hate about enemy difficulty is one of the quests I got into, I hit a sort of wall and spent more than an hour or two trying to fight through a horde of enemies to get into this tower to do a quest. And then I finally gave up on it because I killed a few of them, saved, and then tried to kill the rest of them, and then I died and reloaded the game, and it respawned all of the enemies, including the 2 I already killed before I saved that last time. So I ended up running past all those enemies to get into the tower, and there were no consequences to it. So at a higher difficulty, I was actually less likely to be engaged in combat, which to me I see as a problem. They shouldn't just let you run past everything if you need to. The main motivation of the story is to find Ciri. They don't characterize Ciri at all in the very beginning of the game. They don't give her a personality. They just show that she's incredibly competent, but they don't say anything about her moral or worldview as an individual person. We don't even know why she cares about being a Witcher or anything. So there's nothing to latch on to about how she is as an individual person. I did play one section as her because throughout the game you'll play short sections as Ciri, and they didn't really characterize her pretty much at all in that either, other than her being a little bit immature, which isn't a really good way to motivate you to pursue the main story. The combat, the combat animations, you use like these really long, like cumbersome movements, and it detracts a lot from the believability of it. Like, you have to really commit to doing attacks and stuff, which is fine, but they're done in as ridiculously telegraphed way as possible, and I found that to really take me out of everything. The ease of use that a bunch of characters were using magic and stuff, and the ridiculous things that they were doing with it, makes you wonder why this isn't a society that's essentially going through something like an industrial revolution, but with magic. So like everything's being modernized and streamlined and better through magic in some way. I think the explanation is that there's magic very limited by genetics or something, and it's too tied to individual people or something, that they can't do some kind of complicated magic network stuff. But like one cave I went to had a bunch of portals that you would just activate and open and walk through, which makes you wonder why there aren't like fast travel systems set up where there's portals that people can walk through to travel various different places. Or I was given a long-range communication device that's essentially like a radio, and it makes you wonder why the more prestigious characters don't all have something like a radio. And I know they said it was difficult to make, but you would think like all the super wealthy people or like elite soldiers would have things like that. So it's kind of drawing attention to that, like it's begging those questions. Why isn't magic everywhere? Why isn't it sort of like technology, even if it's limited to very elite groups or whatever? Like, what exactly is going on with that? I didn't like the Geralt doesn't have almost any personality, but at least that's because he's the person you control. And I get this feeling that he feels too safe, like they're afraid to write him to allow you to play as an actually evil person or bad person or morally questionable person. Like in the Fallout games, you can be a legitimately bad person. There's certain things about this game that feel a little too clean in some ways like that I found to be a little bit distracting. But it's a dark fantasy. The dialogue part of the writing is the part that's done really well. And some of the other stuff, like getting into the setting and the story, were seeming kind of gray to me. But it's really difficult to tell these things when you play a game for a very limited kind of scope like this. So I'm not saying anything definitive about it. But if you like dark fantasy, I guess it's worth getting. A lot of people are saying it's the best PC game of all time for such a long time since it came out. And I don't agree with that personally. It just feels like a well-made action adventure game to me mostly. And sort of weird RPG elements smacked onto it. But I'm not saying it's a bad game. You know, if that's what you want, that's what it is. And I'll pursue it if people demand it of me, but I just can't get into The Witcher, I feel like, personally. Every time I've tried it, and this time hasn't been different. So, you know, it's up to you if you think it's worth it. But I can't get into it. So I'm going to move on to the next game. And I'm going to spin the wheel and we're going to see where I land. Well, at least this one's going to be a lot easier.